Know anything? Can you tell us a little bit about what will happen to normal Norma?
I can't tell you too much, but only that she gets a little wild, a little wilder.
Maybe a new love interest, I hear?
Maybe.
In 1969, Peggy Lipton met Quincy Jones on a sailboat in the Bahamas. What seemed like an innocent encounter was actually the beginning of Hollywood's most controversial love story. He was married. She was a rising star. But neither could resist what happened next. For 5 years, they kept their connection secret while the world watched. When they finally married in 1974, it shocked everyone. But the real scandal wasn't their interracial relationship. It was what Quincy was hiding behind closed doors for 15 years. Peggy Lipton was born on August 30th, 1946, in New York City. On the surface, her family seemed perfect. They were wealthy, well-educated, and socially respected. Her father was a Harvard-trained corporate lawyer. Her mother was an artist whose family had once been an important part of Dublin's Jewish community. They lived in Lawrence, Nassau County, one of the most exclusive suburbs. But behind that polished image was a reality far darker than anyone outside the family could imagine. Peggy grew up surrounded by unspoken pain and generational trauma. Some of it came from her mother's side, whose relatives had fled Latvia as Jewish refugees. Her mother had a strong need for control and appearances. When Peggy was born, her name was Peggy Ann, but Rita decided to change it to Margaret Ann. It seemed like a small thing, but it reflected a larger truth about their household. In their social circle, image mattered more than honesty. They wanted to look respectable, even if that meant hiding what was really happening. Around the age of 7, Peggy developed a stutter so severe she sometimes couldn't say her own name. It turned her from a lively child into someone quiet and withdrawn. School became a place of dread, as speaking in class could end in humiliation. Adults dismissed it as a phase, never linking it to the abuse she had suffered. In truth, it was a physical expression of the emotional damage she was carrying. Peggy would later say she became morbid and gloomy, sometimes imagining her own death and holding her breath to feel what that might be like. Acting would one day give her a way out, but at that time, she was trapped inside her own silence. Her life began to change at 15, when her father helped her sign with Eileen Ford's famous modeling agency. It was an extraordinary break for a teenager who could barely say her own name without stuttering. She was tall, slender, with ash blonde hair and large brown eyes. Soon, her face was appearing in fashion magazines across the country. On the outside, she was living a glamorous dream. On the inside, she was still wrestling with the same dark thoughts, using marijuana, cocaine, and diet pills to cope. The irony was sharp. She could model for the world to see, but she often lay awake at night worrying about avoiding certain words on set because of her speech problem. In 1964, when she was 18, the family moved to Los Angeles. The move was sudden and transformative. Within months, Peggy had left home and moved to Topanga Canyon. She immersed herself in the counterculture, yoga, meditation, vegetarianism, and the music scene. She described the 1967 Monterey Pop Festival as a spiritual awakening, surrounded by people who looked and lived like she did. This was also when she experimented with peyote alongside British actor Terence Stamp. It was freedom, but it was also dangerous for someone still carrying deep wounds. That same year, she signed a contract with Universal Pictures. It was a major career step, though it came with a cruel twist. Acting required speaking, and her stutter often made her freeze or pretend she'd forgotten her lines. But when she read from a script, she could speak fluently. The studio placed her in whatever roles they saw fit, and she had no choice but to accept them. Her television debut came in 1965, at age 19, on The John Forsythe Show. It was a modest start, but it marked the moment Peggy began moving from a fashion model into an actress. Over the next few years, she appeared in Bewitched, The Virginian, The Invaders, The Road West, The FBI, The Alfred Hitchcock Hour, and Mr. Novak. These weren't random jobs. Each one placed her in front of audiences who were loyal to their favorite shows and open to new faces. Her appearance on The Alfred Hitchcock Hour gave her a taste of psychological suspense, a genre that would later shape her work in Twin Peaks. In 1965, she even shared the screen with her brother Robert Lipton in an episode of Mr. Novak, a rare family moment in her early career. In 1968, Peggy moved into film with her debut in The Western Blue. It was another family connection. Her brother Robert was also in the cast, playing a character named Antonio, who met his end in a dramatic gunfight. The film starred Terence Stamp, Joanna Pettit, and Carl Malden, giving Peggy the chance to work alongside established names. This was a different world from television, with a slower pace and a bigger scale. Working on Blue with her brother gave her both experience and a sense of comfort during a year when everything in her career was changing. That change came with the Mod Squad. When Peggy Lipton was cast as Julie Barnes in 1968, ABC gave television something new. Her character was a runaway from a prostitute mother's home, arrested for vagrancy, and carrying the weight of a troubled past. The role felt real because Peggy herself understood brokenness. As she once said, she didn't stutter when reading lines from a script. Playing someone else gave her freedom she never had in real life. Her delicate, vulnerable performance earned her 4 Emmy nominations in a row from 1969 to 1972, along with 4 Golden Globe nominations. In 1971, at just 24 years old, she won the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a television series, Drama, one of the youngest ever to do so. This was during the height of the Vietnam War and Civil Rights Movement, making her win more than a personal victory. Julie Barnes was a bridge between the establishment and rebellious youth, and Peggy's award signaled that television was ready to embrace counterculture themes. Her sudden fame also brought a style revolution. Peggy's long, straight ash blonde hair, mini skirts, bell-bottoms, and love beads became a national trend. Ironically, she had no interest in the spotlight, and admitted fame made her paranoid. Still, by 1970, fashion magazines were showcasing the Julie Barnes look, and department stores were selling Mod Squad-inspired clothing lines. Hair salons across the country had women asking for the Peggy Lipton cut. Her style softened the image of hippie culture for suburban America, making it fashionable instead of threatening. Even before the show began, she had been named Deb Star of the Year by the Hollywood Makeup and Hairstylists Guild in 1966, foreshadowing the influence she would later have. The Mod Squad itself broke television rules. Premiering on September 24, 1968, it introduced the radical idea of using young hippie characters as undercover cops. They didn't carry guns and relied on street smarts instead of traditional police tactics. The show tackled issues no other network drama dared to touch at the time, including abortion, racism, PTSD among Vietnam veterans, domestic violence, and police brutality. It also featured one of the first interracial lead casts on primetime TV. By 1970, it had become so respected that one of its episodes was nominated for an Edgar Award for Best Mystery Teleplay. At the peak of her television success, Peggy tried to expand into music. In 1968, she released a self-titled album on Lou Adler's Ode Records. It included covers of songs by top singer-songwriters of the era, such as Laura Nyro's Stony End, which she recorded 2 years before Barbra Streisand's famous version. Her version reached number 121 on the Billboard Bubbling Under chart. She also had modest chart success with other singles, including Lou, which climbed to number 45 in Canada in February 1970. While her music career never matched her TV fame, it made her one of the earliest examples of a television star crossing into the recording industry. Behind the camera, however, her life was much darker. In her 2005 memoir, she admitted she could barely enjoy her success. She suffered from deep social anxiety, rarely left her house, and dreaded interactions with the press. Her shyness was rooted in childhood trauma, including a severe stutter that once made it difficult to say her own name. Fame didn't cure her insecurities, it amplified them. Her romantic life was just as turbulent. At 18, she began an affair with Paul McCartney during Beatlemania. In 1968, she had a brief romance with Elvis Presley, though she later claimed he was mostly impotent at the time. She had other high-profile relationships with Terence Stamp, Keith Moon, and Lou Adler, and once narrowly avoided a sexual encounter with an insistent Sammy Davis Jr. There were even rumors her romance with Elvis ended over her attempts to interest him in Scientology. Despite being adored by millions, she described herself as deeply lonely. Before meeting Quincy Jones in 1973, she said she had lived a very isolated life. She often dated emotionally unavailable men and admitted her love affairs were more about fantasy than reality. In her youth, she sometimes imagined her own death and would try to feel what her last breath might be like, a sign of the morbid thoughts she kept hidden behind her cool, confident public image. Her exploitation by the industry started young. At 15, she was signed by the Eileen Ford modeling agency and quickly pushed into a world that sexualized her. By 17, she had learned to use her looks as a shield for her lack of self-esteem. She began using marijuana, cocaine, and diet pills to cope with depression. The grueling Mod Squad shooting schedule left her exhausted, and by the end of the 5-year run, she was burned out and even more withdrawn. The very system that made her a star also left her struggling to hold on to herself. In 1969, Peggy Lipton was just 22, and at the height of her fame from the Mod Squad, when fate placed her on a sailboat in the Bahamas with Quincy Jones. It was a trip arranged by a mutual friend, and the quiet sway of the boat set the scene for their first meeting. Jones was already a world-class music producer and, more importantly, a married man. Lipton later said she felt an immediate pull toward him, a kind of quiet certainty she couldn't explain. But she knew there was no point in letting her hopes run wild. He was married to Swedish model Ulla Andersson, and she kept her feelings in check. That sunny afternoon came and went, but the moment stayed with her. Neither of them knew it would be the start of a love story that would capture Hollywood's attention for decades. 5 years later, in 1974, Lipton heard whispers through Hollywood circles that Jones was separated. In the years between, she had dated big names like Elvis Presley and Ryan O'Neal, but the memory of that day in the Bahamas had never really faded. She reached out to Jones through his daughter Jolie, curious to see if the timing was finally right. Jolie returned with an answer that made Lipton laugh. She was in the top 10, and Jones later added, "But you had a bullet, baby," meaning she was quickly moving to number 1. The spark reignited instantly. Within 2 weeks of reconnecting, Lipton had moved into his Los Angeles home. She even learned to cook before moving in, knowing Jones didn't trust a woman who couldn't handle herself in the kitchen. He brought his work into their private life too, installing a Moviola editing machine in their bedroom so he could score films without being far from her. That same year, their lives took a sudden and frightening turn. Jones was 41 when he suffered 2 brain aneurysms, one after the other, that nearly killed him. The first struck without warning while he was at home with Lipton. He described it as feeling like the back of my head had been taken off with a shotgun blast. Doctors operated for 7.5 hours to repair the damage, only to find another aneurysm close to bursting. They performed a second operation immediately, removing part of his skull and securing it back with 6 metal clips. His condition was so dire that friends began preparing a memorial service at the shrine in Los Angeles. He later said it felt as though he had attended his own funeral while still breathing. The surgeries saved his life, but ended his trumpet career for good, as the pressure from playing could be deadly. In the middle of this fragile recovery, he and Lipton decided to marry, sealing a bond shaped by survival as much as by love. Their marriage in 1974 brought them into direct conflict with the racism still deeply rooted in society. Lipton wrote in her autobiography, Breathing Out, that prejudice became part of their daily lives. Police officers would often pull them over, assuming that Lipton, a blonde white woman, was a prostitute being forced into Jones's car. It happened so often that they came to expect it. The prejudice cut even deeper when it came from her own family. Her mother openly said she couldn't imagine her daughter with a black man or raising mixed-race children. Lipton eventually told her mother she had to accept the relationship or lose her altogether. That ultimatum stopped the open opposition, but the damage lingered. In March 1974, Peggy Lipton and Quincy Jones welcomed their first daughter, Kidada. 2 years later, in February 1976, Rashida was born. Their marriage had already sparked controversy, and the arrival of 2 biracial daughters added another layer to the social challenges they faced. At the time, mixed-race children often dealt with prejudice and isolation. Lipton's mother had once told her she imagined a white prince charming or a great Jewish king for her daughter, not a black man with mixed-race children. She only began to soften after meeting her granddaughters. Kidada later left her mostly white private school for a predominantly black public high school where she felt at home. Rashida, on the other hand, first experienced racial tension while at Harvard University during the height of identity politics. Both daughters went on to have successful careers, with Rashida starring in Parks and Recreation and appearing in films like The Social Network, while Kidada appeared in music videos and had a well-known relationship with rapper Tupac Shakur. Their early experiences helped shape their commitment to multicultural causes and diversity advocacy. When the Mod Squad ended in 1973, Lipton was just 27 years old, at the peak of her career. She had won a Golden Globe, earned 4 Emmy nominations, and could have secured decades of leading roles. Instead, she chose to step away completely from acting to raise her daughters. She said she felt burnt out after 5 years of constant work and had grown withdrawn and insecure from all the attention. Her break from Hollywood lasted 15 years, with only one exception, a return in 1979 for the TV movie The Return of the Mod Squad. By then, Kidada was 5 and Rashida was 3, and Lipton was deeply focused on being present for them. She later admitted that when Twin Peaks came along in 1990, she didn't even know how to call anyone to put herself forward again. Rashida would later describe her as the most unconditionally loving person and a constant support at auditions. Her brief return to television in 1979 for The Return of the Mod Squad was more than just a reunion. It was her only professional project during her long hiatus. The movie brought back Lipton, Clarence Williams III, and Michael Cole 5 years after the series had ended, giving fans a nostalgic look at the characters they loved. At the same time, Quincy Jones was reaching new heights in his music career, producing Michael Jackson's Off the Wall in 1979 and later Thriller in 1982. Lipton's choice to turn down other offers in those years likely cost her millions in earnings, but it showed her priorities clearly. Peggy Lipton and Quincy Jones seemed like the perfect Hollywood couple when they married on September 14, 1974. For years, their relationship looked strong from the outside, but by the mid-1980s, things were quietly falling apart. Quincy later said he was dealing with 7 of the top 10 most stressful life events at the same time. His work in the music industry left him drained, and the illness of his mother added more pressure at home. Peggy, who had left her acting career at the height of her fame in the Mod Squad to focus on their family, was also feeling the weight. Their Bel Air home, once a happy place, began to feel tense, filled with arguments and emotional distance. By 1986, after 12 years of marriage, they separated. Their daughters, Kidada and Rashida, were only 12 and 10 at the time. To the public, the news came as a shock because they had always seemed deeply in love. In reality, they had already been drifting apart for years. During their 3-year separation, Peggy raised the girls while Quincy continued his demanding work schedule. On October 10, 1989, Peggy filed for divorce in Los Angeles, citing irreconcilable differences. She asked for joint custody and support, bringing an official end to a relationship that had started in 1969 when they met on a friend's boat in the Bahamas. The divorce was finalized in 1990, closing the chapter on one of Hollywood's most famous interracial marriages. Behind the legal words lay years of strain, career pressures, and unspoken betrayals. One of those betrayals came to light decades later. In a 2018 interview, Quincy, then 84, revealed that he had 22 girlfriends around the world during their marriage. He named cities from Cape Town to Shanghai and claimed the women all knew about each other. He even said his daughters had to set an age limit for the women he dated because some were younger than them. This admission made it clear that Peggy had endured far more than the public ever knew. The divorce also left a deep mark on their children. After the split in 1990, Kidada, then 16, chose to live with Quincy, while 14-year-old Rashida stayed with Peggy. The arrangement meant the sisters grew up apart, each shaped by very different home environments. Rashida later said the split was hard, but that her parents' continued closeness helped make things easier. Even so, birthdays, holidays, and family events became complicated, and the division of their home left a lasting impact on both daughters. Peggy Lipton returned to television on March 28, 1988, after being away for 15 years. She had left acting in 1973 to focus on her family with Quincy Jones, but by this time, they had separated in 1986 and would later divorce in 1990. Her comeback role was in the ABC TV movie Addicted to His Love, where she played an assistant district attorney. Barry Bostwick played a charming con man who used fake names to scam middle-aged women through dating services. The story followed 4 women who figured out his scheme and worked together to trap him, using another woman as bait. Lipton was 41 when she took the part, showing that an actress could still land a strong leading role beyond her 30s, which was rare in Hollywood then. The role was a sharp contrast to her Mod Squad days, as she now portrayed a confident legal professional, proving her growth as an actress. 2 years later, in 1990, she landed the role that would define the rest of her career. David Lynch cast her as Norma Jennings in Twin Peaks. Lynch was known for working with new faces, so giving the role to Lipton was unexpected. Norma was the warm-hearted owner of the Double R Diner, famous for its coffee and cherry pie. Fans loved her romance with Big Ed Hurley, played by Everett McGill, and the pairing became one of TV's most memorable love stories. The role fit Lipton's real personality more than her earlier fame ever had, and critics praised her performance during the show's 2-season run from 1990 to 1991. For many viewers, Julie Barnes from the Mod Squad faded into the background, replaced forever by Norma Jennings. In 1992, she stayed loyal to the Twin Peaks world by appearing in David Lynch's film Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me. The movie was darker than the series and premiered to boos at the Cannes Film Festival. It also failed at the box office, making it a risky move for her. But she remained proud of her part. Outside of Twin Peaks, Lipton showed she could adapt to changing television styles. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, she had recurring roles in shows like Crash and Popular. In Popular, she played Kelly Foster, stepping into a modern teen drama that was worlds away from her 1960s counterculture image. In 2017, she appeared on Angie Tribeca, acting alongside her daughter, Rashida Jones. She played Peggy Tribeca, the mother of Rashida's character, bringing their real-life relationship onto the screen. That year became a milestone for her, with both the Twin Peaks revival and this family collaboration. Rashida, born on February 25, 1976, had become a well-known actress in The Office, Parks and Recreation, and The Social Network, and had even won a Grammy for a documentary about her father, Quincy Jones. Lipton's other daughter, Kidada, had also built her own career in the entertainment industry. By the end of her life, Peggy Lipton had left behind not only iconic television roles, but also a family legacy that continued her connection to the spotlight. Peggy Lipton's memoir, Breathing Out, came out in 2005 and ran 310 pages. Co-written with David and Coco Dalton, it stripped away the soft, glamorous image people thought they knew. In it, she spoke openly about her relationships with Paul McCartney and Elvis Presley, as well as her experiences with sexual abuse, affairs, and an abortion. She revealed how painful it was to face racist backlash during her marriage to Quincy Jones in the 1970s. Even her own mother had trouble accepting the relationship, saying she had imagined Peggy ending up with a white Prince Charming or a great Jewish king. Lipton also admitted that during her biggest success on the Mod Squad, she felt too unsure of herself to truly enjoy fame. The book's honesty made it a bestseller and left readers with a very different picture of Hollywood in the 1960s and 70s. In 2004, at the age of 58, Peggy was told she had colon cancer. The diagnosis came just after she had wrapped a successful stage run in the Vagina Monologues. Medical records suggest she may have been diagnosed in 2003, but her treatment, which likely included surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation, stretched into the following year. She fought hard and beat the disease, something she called her most recent triumph in her memoir. Her daughter Rashida said the experience brought the family closer. It would be another 15 years before cancer returned, but her initial recovery showed the determination that defined her life. Even after divorcing in 1989, Peggy and Quincy Jones stayed close. They had been married for 15 years and separated for 3 before officially ending it. But they shielded their daughters, Kidada and Rashida, from the worst parts. They co-parented with unusual warmth and worked together on family matters as if the marriage had never ended. In 2018, Rashida told Entertainment Weekly that their closeness made everything easier because it came from a place of love. Quincy even appeared alongside Peggy in Rashida's Netflix documentary Quincy. When she died, he called their love eternal. On May 11, 2019, Peggy died at home at the age of 72, surrounded by Kidada, Rashida, and several nieces. Her daughters said she passed peacefully and called her their beacon of light. The colon cancer she had once beaten had returned and spread. News of her death brought a wave of tributes from across Hollywood, from co-stars and friends who had known her over her 5-decade career. For many, her passing marked not only the loss of a beloved actress, but the closing of a chapter in the story of 1960s and 70s Hollywood.